Welcome to the Market Makers in Middle East and Africa podcast. This is your host, Abrar Hussain. In this podcast, I speak to CEOs, business leaders, and entrepreneurs who are defining the future of companies and the industry in the region. The intent is to share their experience with wider business community so they can invest in the region, scale businesses here, and make a positive impact in the Middle East and Africa region. I will also touch base on sustainability and the ways to drive it. Today, we speak to our important guest. She's a co-founder at ENVI Lodges, Noelle Homsy. Noelle, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Abrar, for having me.
Yeah, and it's a pleasure to have you. I hope you are comfortable.
Yes, all is well.
I get quite motivated when I speak to entrepreneurs, and you are one of them. So tell us about your story and how you ended up being an entrepreneur.
Well, to be honest, I never planned to be an entrepreneur. It wasn't, not even in my wildest dreams. I'm a very risk-averse person. And entrepreneurship takes a lot of courage, a lot of risks that you have to take. You jump on opportunities that you don't know where they lead. I was a person who wanted a very straight career path, which didn't happen. So I'm an architect by training. I started my career in designing, real estate. I then moved to the site where I was looking after around 400, workers on site. It was a very male-dominated industry, if you want. I was one of 4 women on this site. In the meantime, I was fortunate to complete a master's degree in engineering management, where we touched on disputes that can happen between different parties. And this is something that I liked. I liked the mediation part of it, the amicable settlements and all the psychology that comes with it when you deal with conflicts that are sometimes, on millions and billions of dollars. So this prompted me to do a summer program at Harvard in the US. It was specifically focused on disputes and organizational resolutions, after which I worked in this field. So you see how, the shift happened completely from architecture, on-site, construction, dirty work, and then the more refined and the paralegal stuff. Following that period, I decided to go and do my MBA. I realized, okay, I'm a bit all over the place. I need to find focus, and I need to know really what I want to do in life, what I like, what excites me, what do I want to wake up in the morning for. So I went to INSEAD. I started in Singapore. That was in 2017. And I remember, one of the fondest memories of this year was my travels in the region in Singapore. And Asia is big on, ecolodges, immersing you in nature, same as Africa, but my experience was more in Asia. So I got the chance to visit lots of beautiful countries, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, Philippines, staying on a remote island in Indonesia, really anywhere you can think of. It was my chance because we were based in Singapore and it's a hub there. And this is when I started thinking about the potential of, this part of tourism, which I had no clue about. All I knew is the regular traditional hotels that you know. But I knew that I wanted to be either in real estate or in hospitality. And I knew I wanted to move to Dubai. So after INSEAD in 2018, I joined a hotel management company here in Dubai. And I worked in the development team, which means dealing with investors, dealing with owners of land who want to build hotels for my company to manage. So this was my job for around 2.5 years. And then during the pandemic, I realized, okay, nobody's answering my emails. Nobody wants to build hotels. Everyone is, putting everything on hold. And while it was comfortable not doing anything, it was a bit, not only boring, but also I felt that, I'm not helping myself. I'm not helping my career being in such a stagnating mode. So I thought to myself, the best side to be on when there's a crisis is the consulting side, right? Because everyone needs consultants when there's a problem. So I moved to work for Grant Thornton here in the UAE. I looked after their hospitality and tourism practice for a year, after which I launched, together with my co-founder, Chris, who was my colleague before Grant Thornton, we launched ENVI Lodges in September 2021.
Perfect. So I'll make it out that INSEAD brought the best in you, and then Philippines and Vietnam inspired you to be into hospitality, right? This is how I'll say. But coming to hospitality and tourism, which you touch base, and your venture is into that. Pandemic changed it a lot, right? People didn't want to travel at that time, or they cannot travel. There was no people in the hotels, and no one wants to invest in hospitality. How do you see pandemic changing hospitality for long and short term, and how do you see the future of hospitality?
You're right. The pandemic was kind of a temporary stop. Sorry, but to be honest with you, things had they had started to shift before the pandemic. What the pandemic did is just accelerate this change and this shift. We had started seeing people or travelers, if you want, changing their needs, changing their decisions when they travel. You started seeing the topics that are being discussed moving, towards sustainability, activism, topics around activism changing. All of that, suddenly was boosted post-pandemic. And what we realized, you remember these videos about penguins walking in the streets and wild animals, reaching, or even here in Dubai, we started seeing the stingrays, entering the creek because it wasn't polluted anymore, or, people were not interfering with the natural ecosystem. And people were really surprised. So what we realized is that travelers are not bad intentioned. They just don't know. They didn't know what their decisions or their travels did to the environment. They weren't aware of the impact they were having on the environment. And when they saw this real impact, it was really apparent. You could see it with the naked eye. It wasn't, the ozone layer that you can't see. They realized that they can do something about it. So that's one part of the pandemic, or that's one positive outcome of the pandemic that we got in hospitality. The second thing that we realized is that people are looking at luxury in a different angle. Luxury today, or the definition of luxury, is no longer, about the bells and whistles and the marble floors and the golden chandeliers that we used to know in hospitality. Obviously, there is a market for that. But today, the new generation of travelers that is driven by the Gen Z, but not only, they're affecting the other and older generations which have higher purchasing power. This generation is looking for real experiences. They're looking for authenticity. They're looking for, personal and mental development, for wellness and well-being. And most importantly, they're looking, for them, luxury is when they know that their decisions or their trips and travels and indulgences are actually leaving a positive impact on the environment and not a negative one. For them, this is real luxury. So these two components together is what drove us to launch ENVI Lodges.
Perfect. And what is the kind of the grand vision that attracted you, and what ENVI Lodges plan to do?
So let me tell you a bit about what we do. ENVI Lodges is a luxury experiential eco-lodge brand and management company. So what we do is we manage properties on behalf of owners. We do everything from, setting the standards, hiring the people, training them, marketing, sales, connecting to all the platforms. So we basically take over a property and do everything, and it's branded as an ENVI Lodge. Obviously, we have a business vision, which is to grow this brand or to build this brand for this new generation of travelers, to address their needs, to speak to them, for them to associate themselves with us, and for us to have, aligned values with this new generation of travelers for sustainable growth. And obviously to grow as well our value, the brand value and the company value to our shareholders and investors who have entrusted us with their investment at such an early stage. That's our business vision. But what's more important is our bigger purpose, if you want. And for us, the purpose comes first, and then everything else follows. Our purpose is to drive the industry in the right direction. You know that the hospitality industry is not the most eco-friendly industry, the most green industry. It's actually one of the worst. So there's a lot that can be done there. And we'd like to think of ourselves as disruptors who are driving, different players, whether suppliers, manufacturers, designers, other operators as well, in the right direction. So that one day we can say that sustainable and regenerative tourism is the norm. And we wouldn't be bragging about that, because this would become, the norm. That is, accessible to everyone and not just a luxury for a few.
Yeah. Apart from, managing the properties, how you make it sustainable, or how you'll say that you are more sustainable than any other property across the world, and how do you manage that?
So ENVI Lodges was built on the basis of sustainability. We wouldn't exist. If you see our name, ENVI is the first 4 letters of environment. So we started with sustainability, and then we grew. We built our standards. We built our technical guidelines, our design guidelines. We hired the right people. So we're created on the basis of 7, to be specific, 7 sustainability pillars that cover everything from design, from ideation and concept, choosing the location, design, construction, up to operations, everything that has to do with operations and with how we interact and we engage the guests. These range from respecting the land, protecting the wildlife, connecting with the local communities, understanding where our resources come from, where our energy comes from, where do we source our food from, how do we deal with food wastage, do we compost, where do we dispose of our wastes, and of course, most importantly, how do we engage our guests? Because you see, there's a difference between what we call sustainable tourism and what is ecotourism. Sustainable tourism is providing these opportunities for guests to have a minimal impact on the environment when they travel. Whereas ecotourism is going one step further. It means engaging those guests, inviting them to participate in the initiatives that you have at your property, educating their kids, letting them pick their own vegetables and giving them to the chef, letting them sort their waste, letting them maybe clean the beach that's in front of the property. So all of these initiatives help our guests, they nudge our guests in a certain way. And our goal is to be able to change their habits even beyond their 2 to 3 nights at our lodges. And this is where the bigger effect comes from, because it has a ripple effect. Imagine, every guest that stays with you goes at home and starts, sorting their wastes, educating their kids on where their food is coming from, how to reduce their food waste, and so on and so forth.
And there's a big impact, one, apart from having a tourism which generates less waste, less energy, and more important, the kids, the impact that it will have on the kids is amazing, right? Even the education of kids, and they go back home and, start living in the same way. Where are the locations of your ENVI Lodges currently, and what stage you are in your startup or new venture cycle?
So we launched ENVI last September 2021. We established ourselves in Dubai. We're incorporated in Dubai and in Abu Dhabi. So this is our home region, right? This is where we are. This is where we started. And we're very lucky that in this region, we have governments that are leading the change, governments that are investing a lot in tourism, particularly Saudi Arabia. We've all seen the big campaigns that are associated with the Vision 2030, whether they're related to tourism or other sectors as well. So naturally, we were kind of pulled towards Saudi. Our first 3 properties that were announced are going to be in Saudi Arabia, in different locations with different experiences. One is on the beach with a beach experience. Another is in a farm, a palm plantation, and the third is on a mountain, kind of a canyon-like mountain, beautiful location with caves and a lot of things to discover. So yeah, as I said, Saudi was a natural first stop for us. But given that we're building ENVI to be a global brand, and this is our vision, this is how we've set our structure to be. Because it's not the same to build an operator that's going to operate 1 or 2 in your home country. It's very different than saying, okay, eventually I want to become a global brand. So it's now time for us to take this brand globally. And we're very, very excited to announce a few properties that are going to be outside this region, particularly in the Americas, in Africa, and in Europe. Hopefully these will be announced in Q1 next year.
Wow.
So 2023.
So good.
I don't know when this is being published, but Q1 2023.
Okay.
I don't want to say where exactly because I don't want to spoil, the surprise. But for us, this was a very important step at this stage, because the longer you stay in one region, the longer you're being labeled as a regional regional brand.
So having Saudi Arabia to have first 3 properties is a very interesting choice, and I'm hearing a lot of things about Saudi, 2030 vision, a lot of investment in most of the industries. Why you choose Saudi, and how is the experience of starting a new venture in UAE?
Why did we choose Saudi? Saudi chose us, but we would have chosen Saudi as well. Listen, there's a lot that's happening in Saudi Arabia with government support and government kind of leading by example, investing in the right sectors, pushing the agenda when it comes to sustainability, when it's not only sustainability. Today, sustainability is old news. We're talking about regenerative tourism. If you look at what's happening in the giga projects like the Red Sea, NEOM, all of these, giga projects are now putting Saudi on the international tourism map. Not only tourism, but with whatever they're doing on the ecological side as well. So we want to be there And it only makes sense for a brand like us to start, next door. This is where our investors or our connections in terms of owners are. And we want to be one of the first, given the proximity, to plant our flag there.
Perfect. And how has been your experience of starting a new venture in UAE, Abu Dhabi or Dubai? And I see a lot of things happening on the new venture side here, a lot of investments coming, 1,200 deals last year, billions of funds raised. So how do you see that?
It's a very interesting place to be in. And you're right in terms of number of deals. I was reading a couple of days ago, there was an article in Forbes Middle East that said, or that listed the top most funded top 50 most funded startups in the Middle East, and they were able to raise a total of $3.2 billion this year. Wow. As compared to $3 billion last year. That's a good 7% increase. Yeah. And if you compare it to what's happening globally, that's completely, opposite to the wave. Again, I was reading globally, November 2022, total raised funds for startups was around 22 billion, if I'm not mistaken, compared to 70 billion last year, November 2021. That's around 70%
decline, yes.
decline. So you see where the Middle East, how resilient this region is in terms of funding. We're so lucky and grateful to have access to funding here. And it's not luck. It doesn't come, out of nowhere. It's obviously the outcome of a lot of work done by governments, by players that form part of this ecosystem. Yes, the Middle East is an emerging market, and yes, usually emerging markets have a lot of potential, much more than saturated markets, because obviously there's room for growth. Okay. But add to that, the effort and the support that government is giving, whether to set up these right jurisdictions, all the free zones that give you lots of options here in the UAE. They're very investor friendly, very startup friendly. All the digitization that's happening at this level, which is so important for entrepreneurs, because it's a great support. Yeah. And the access to funding, because investors are really, why do investors want to invest in the Middle East? Because there's trust. There's trust that this region is growing. It's not, their investments are not going to go to waste. And I personally have a lot of faith in the great minds that are coming up from the Middle East, and I see, I'm very positive about the future growth of this region.
And there is, I think, a big market as well, apart from, new startups coming. There are a lot of initiatives from the government, $7 trillion GDP across the Middle East and Africa region, plus the 20% of the population of the world lives in this region. So I see it's a big market as well.
Exactly.
And I still believe that it's just a start, and it will grow further. I see a very good future ahead. Now, we were talking about the good things that are happening, and it's definitely a great region, and you're at the right time. Funding is there, access to funding is there. What are the challenges you as an entrepreneur face, which can be, maybe the companies, big enterprises, or the policymaker can help? So what are some of the challenges that you have faced?
The challenges, to be honest, we mentioned that the government has done a lot with creating these different jurisdictions, these different free zones that are investor and startup friendly. But to be able to select the best, and this is what happened to us, we made a mistake in the beginning with selecting the right jurisdiction for us. And then we realized, there are some encumbrances or obstacles to to attracting international investors, big lead investors. So the legal cost that's associated with finding the right setup or the right structure or the right jurisdiction is very high, in the UAE. And this is an encumbrance for small startups that, want to keep, every dollar of their investment for, growth or something else. So they end up taking wrong decisions at an early stage, which could have, negative effects in the long run. Thankfully, we figured it out fast and we're able to restructure ourselves. So that's one of the challenges that we've faced. Another one is I feel that the banking sector is not following at the same pace. I'm part of an INSEAD entrepreneurship WhatsApp group. And every week or every 2 weeks, I kid you not, there's a question about how to open a bank account. And the bank is not responding. And the bank is asking for too many papers and too many, it's so bureaucratic and it's too complicated. All of these, pain points, I feel could be avoided when it comes to the support services, such as the banking sector supporting the startup ecosystem. That's another, I think, point to improve that forms part of the startup ecosystem. At a personal level or at the ENVI level, we felt that we were a bit at a disadvantage because we're not a tech startup. And here, everyone's jumping on tech. And the first question we get asked is, what's your tech angle? And we don't have to have a tech angle, we can raise money and be a startup without being a tech startup. So we felt that, this was a
kind
point
of buzzword everywhere.
Yeah.
But sustainability might have helped you. Do you find that sustainability or ESG is becoming mainstream even when you raise funds, or the boards or the investors are keen to invest in these kind of startups?
For sure, the sustainability angle helped us a lot. And the fact that for us, it's really embedded in our identity. It's not a marketing gig that we're playing to kind of, attract investors or attract guests or build our brand. The fact that we're very genuine about it, and you can see it that it's the basis of what we do, definitely helped. Now, I spoke about the hospitality industry being, not the greenest, if you want, but at the same time, we're seeing a lot of progress when it comes to at least the major players. Policies have been put in place. The major players are now putting sustainability at the top of their agendas. They're publishing their sustainability reports. They're reporting on sustainable initiatives that they're doing. So there's a lot that is being done.
Yeah, I see.
To be fair, it's not easy, because imagine these big players that have thousands and thousands of hotels. They have to retrofit everything. They have to retrain thousands of employees. They have to, it's not easy when you're trying to steer a big ship. Yeah. Obviously, it's much easier for us starting fresh because we can start in the right way from the beginning.
This brings me to another question, which you mentioned, that when you have big companies, mainly in hospitality as well, and they have a lot of employees, a lot of rooms, what do you recommend as an entrepreneur, how they can be more sustainable and add value to the environment and to the guests as well?
I think they're on the right path. What they need is a roadmap and a clear end goal. And there are lots of consultants today that can help with that. Even here in the region, a lot of great minds and experts, and obviously we can learn from different regions. there are countries, there are destinations that are at the forefront of everything that has to do with sustainability, especially in tourism, ecotourism, one of which is Costa Rica. Costa Rica has become a buzzword again in this field. But for me, the most important thing in anything you do, not only in reaching sustainability, in anything you do, is putting a target, putting a goal, and then breaking down the actions into small milestones and small targets, and able to for you to be able to reach it. Yeah.
You mean, as a leader in the hospitality industry, and we see a lot of things happening in the region as well, in UAE, a lot of focus on tourism, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Saudi as well, trying to attract a lot of visitors. What's your view on Africa?
Africa. So we have projects that are coming up in Africa. Africa is a very interesting continent. Just like the Middle East, it's an emerging market, so there's a lot of potential, there's a lot of growth. But Africa comes with its challenges. One is access to funding. Although you have the Western big funds and the IFC and the likes that are interested, and they're eyeing, they have their eyes on Africa. They have very strict guidelines, and they come with big tickets, big minimum tickets. So there's still this challenge to small entrepreneurs who want to start something in Africa.
So raising funds, I think, is a big challenge, and the access to infrastructure, maybe.
For sure, access to infrastructure. For us, it's not a challenge because we're a service company. But it's a challenge. We're finding it a challenge for the owners of land who want to build lodges. They're finding it hard to get funds to be able to develop those properties. But if we touch on a bit the different sectors, or even in the hospitality sector, Africa has a challenge when it comes to education. Whether it's educating your market on a specific product that you're launching, and you might know better in tech, and then for market adoption, that is, and then educating your staff, because they're going to be the forefront of whatever you're offering. They're going to be guest facing in hospitality. So educating, training local talent
is also a challenge as well.
big chunk of the efforts that you put in Africa.
Thank you for sharing that, Noelle. And my last question to you, it's always kind of challenging to be an entrepreneur, visualizing something and then making it a reality. What are the good things of being an entrepreneur? For you. What part you enjoy the most of being an entrepreneur?
Yeah. I'm going to tell you 3 things, although there are many things, many positive things of being an entrepreneur. The first thing is that, now everyone's talking about work-life balance and, finding time for yourself and whatnot. When you're an entrepreneur, this is no longer relevant, because work and life blend together to have an amazing relationship where, it all becomes life. For you, it's a happy life, and you have no problem, your startup is always on your mind. And that's not a bad thing, because it's not like one is taking over from the other, and you need to find the right balance to get, to have proper mental health, because you enjoy doing what you're doing, and this becomes your life. That's one great thing I found with being an entrepreneur. Another thing is it's much easier to find purpose when you're an entrepreneur. And that doesn't mean that, people who are employed in a company can't find purpose. I'm not saying that, but it's more challenging for them. And when you're an entrepreneur, you're actively shaping that purpose, and you're in charge of it. And the third thing, hopefully, if you're an entrepreneur, you're building your legacy. You're building something, whether it's a product, it's a company, it's a concept, I don't know, whatever you're doing. You're writing a book, that's being an entrepreneur. You are building something that will outlive you. You're building your legacy, and you're building something that eventually your kids are going to be proud of. And for me, this is really, really important.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Noelle. It was a pleasure to talk to you. And I'll say that what I learned today is to have purpose and to leave your legacy and to have this work-life integration. Entrepreneur is a very good career option. So thank you for coming, and it was a pleasure to talk to you, Noelle.
Thank you, Abrar. My pleasure is all mine.
Thank you.